Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
April 29, 2020, the $450 million Seizure edition. First up, from the Washington Post, Trump has ordered meat plants to stay open during the pandemic, and he will sign an executive order compelling meat processors to remain open to head off shortages in the nation's food chain supply. He will invoke the Defense Production Act, which will classify meat plants as essential infrastructure that must remain open. Of course, he says nothing about protective gear for employees, although the article notes that the government will provide that, given the lack of ability to provide protective gear to anyone else who needs it. Good luck. Next up, from the Wall Street Journal, the problems for Boeing not only continue, but they actually get worse, as the company is facing criminal and civil scrutiny now for control lapses on the 737 MAX assembly line, potentially exposing the plane maker to greater liability than had previously been reported. A grand jury probe is focusing on what Boeing employees told the FAA, but simultaneously the DOJ and FAA have been examining factory problems that raise red flags about the company's compliance with mandatory production rules and safeguards. Boeing found debris mistakenly left behind by workers in fuel tanks and other interior spaces on approximately half of the 737 MAX aircrafts it has started inspecting since last January. These planes have not been delivered, but this is very disconcerting news, as these tools and other debris left behind can negatively impact the performance of the planes, leading to safety violations and potential catastrophic events. So more bad news for Boeing, as it can't seem to get its feet moving in the same direction positively. Next up, from the Miami Herald, since targeting Venezuelan corruption, in 2017, South Florida federal officials have seized over $450 million in bank accounts, luxury property, show horses, high-end watches, and super yachts belonging to more than a dozen government officials and business people in Venezuela and those that have moved to the United States. They've all been charged with money laundering billions of dollars in the U.S., Switzerland, and other countries. The largest catch was Venezuela's former treasurer, Alejandro Andrade, who wrote several checks totaling more than $250 million to the U.S. government last fall after the money had been transferred into Swiss bank accounts, according to his defense attorneys. This payment counted towards a $1 billion forfeiture judgment against him. Federal officials have also tracked down dozens of multi-million-dollar condos and homes in the South Florida area going forward. And then finally, from Reuters, a report that the Swiss bank Falcon Private Bank, a wealth manager that was the center of the 1MDB scandal, could lose its Swiss banking license by the end of the week. Swiss financial market watchdogs could withdraw the license for the bank owned by the Abu Dhabi State Investment Sovereign Wealth Fund on grounds it continuously failed to meet regulatory requirements, most specifically around its role in 1MDB. Falcon gained notoriety after it was reported investigators had found nearly $700 million transferred into its account at the bank's Singapore outpost. So 1MDB continues to resonate, and it could result in obviously catastrophic loss. I hope you are staying safe and working from home, and even if one of the Republican governors has reopened your state, you're still exercising caution. You're staying safe, self-distancing, and isolating during this time. Thank you for listening. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.